I wish I had enough room to spin around in my chair for that intro. Hey everybody, Dan here with Steve, father, son, here
Yeah,
on Yesshift.
right. And actually, would you even have enough room to do like a full spin in that office?
I
Or
don't, because there's a desk, there's this desk, and I got to return here, so this is about the best I could do. The chair will spin, but there's not room for my legs.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everyone. We are Yesshift, and today we are talking about Steve Howe's recently reissued solo albums Portraits of Bob Dylan, released in 1999 originally, and Natural Timbre, originally released in 2001.
Timbre, actually.
Uh, so I looked this up, and the American pronunciation is timbre, and over in Britain they say it like tamba, but I also
Huh.
found this old interview where Steve was asked about the pronunciation, and it's text only, but it looks like he was like timber, tamber, tamba, like either one is fine. So I guess
Huh.
it's like either one or
I've always
whatever.
heard the term as timbre, as in the timbre in one's voice. It has to do with tone.
Okay.
So
So
interesting.
yeah. Huh. Yeah. And I guess timbre is also, I mean, it also reminds me of tambourine, like the
Yeah,
way it's
that's
working with
where it
that.
comes
Yeah.
from, a different timbre. Yeah, very interesting. I never heard it pronounced like that. Um, but hey, Steve Howe doesn't always know what he's doing. Just kidding. It's a great album, and we'll get to that. We're going to cover the Bob Dylan Portraits of Bob Dylan first.
Yeah, so this album, Portraits of Bob Dylan, this was released in 1999, but quite a background. So Steve Howe, of course, was a Bob Dylan fan. He said that Freewheeling was the first Bob Dylan album that he listened to that came out in 1963. And
Wow, so
that,
did I.
oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Wow.
and and I might share the photo a different way so that shows the full thing. But um, fast forward to the 90s, like around 94, 95, he decides to record his own version of one of the songs, which was The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll. And he describes it as like a bombastic version. But then he saw this other guitarist named Martin Simpson cover the song like at a show, and Steve thought to himself, "Oh, I feel like I didn't really do it enough justice." So I guess he like set it aside for a while, and then eventually returned and reworked it into how it is on the album. And I also have a little passage from his autobiography we read a while ago, All My
Yeah.
Yesterdays. He says, "I'd been working on an album of Bob Dylan's forlorn love songs with the working title Signals Crossed. Bob Dylan's manager, Jeff Rosen, had sent me a tape as a project developed of the unreleased title Well, Well, Well that Bob wrote with Danny O'Keefe. Singers had been invited to pick a song from a list I drew up of Dylan's titles and record themselves anywhere at my expense. John Anderson went off list, asking if I could record Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, as he'd
Figures.
always wanted to sing it." So I guess we could start there. I feel like among Yes fans, that's probably the most well-known track from this
Yeah.
album.
Could you imagine that phone call and Steve rolling his eyes and sighing and go, "Okay, John." It's just so funny.
Yeah, maybe, but he has said how happy he was with how the track came out, and funny enough, it's the longest track on the album, and we'll read what the tracks are on this in a little bit, but
Yeah.
at 12 minutes, it's the longest track, and it's the opening track, and so being a Yes fan, I did wonder to myself whether there were some embellishments, like, you know how early Yes would cover a few songs but extend them by quite a
20
substantial
minutes.
amount. Yeah.
Like
Well, like
America.
America, Something's Coming, but
Yeah.
No, apparently the Bob Dylan song, Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, is pretty much that amount, if I believe. Let me just double check the runtime of that.
While you
Uh,
check that, I wanna mention something that,
yeah, like over like 10 or 11 minutes from the looks of it.
okay. You know, I have probably fairly short opinions about this album, and they're fairly short because I didn't I don't feel like I'm reviewing it in a proper way, or rather the way most would expect, and here's what I mean. Being that they're all covers and it's a tribute album basically, I'm honestly really not familiar with Mr. Dylan's work. I mean, obviously I've heard a couple of the popular songs over the last 62 years, but I'm not familiar enough with his work to go, "Oh, that's this one and that's my comparison." And I did not have time to put on those songs and do a side by side. So I'm kind of taking these in really for the first time as works by Steve that were done by someone else whose work I'm not familiar with before, which is probably not a fair way to, well, it's fair the way I'm going to comment on it, but it's not in a comparison manner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and by that same token, so I've listened to at least some of Bob Dylan's works, like at least the first few albums, but that was way back like 15 years ago in high school or something. So I'm not as intimately familiar with the original Bob Dylan tracks. Um, but I guess I was listening to this album similar to how you were, like listening to it as its own thing, and as such I think it's really great music. I would be curious to hear like what Bob Dylan aficionados would think of this.
Absolutely. And it does make me want to go into Bob's catalog and do those comparisons, but also it really, for a deeper reason, it makes me want to go into the catalog, being that he was a big enough influence on one of my favorite musicians ever, Steve Howe, to make this album. So it's like, wow, I want to see if I can identify the link and almost listen to Steve's music a bit differently. Like, I know he was into Chet Atkins, I know he was into Wes Montgomery, different things like that. I know he saw Jimi Hendrix and what his reaction response was. And this is just different. Like, he was such an influence that he did a whole album for him. So it makes me want to take a different approach than I think I would have if I already knew Bob Dylan's music so well,
Right, and Steve has cited at least a couple things where there was like a Dylan influence on him. Like he said that the preacher, the teacher part of And You and I has a bit of a Bob Dylan
Interesting.
influence in it. And
And is
that
it more musically or lyrically, Steve?
well, I think musically in the context that
Okay.
he said about that, but when it comes to Let's Pretend, the ABWH song, he has a
Yeah.
demo of that on one of his homebrew albums. Oh no, not Let's Pretend, a Quartet,
Oh, I love
where
that song. It's such a beautiful piece.
yeah, and I think he has said that I wanna learn more about you, that there's like
Yeah.
a bit of a Bob Dylan influence on that as well.
Huh. Interesting. That's really, I love that piece. Ba-da-bum, bum, da-da-dum, dun, da-da-da-da-da, and all those little
Yeah.
and the little Yes references in there. Long distance run around, relayer, and there's another one I
Oh
can't
yeah,
think of.
Gates of Delirium, South Side of the Sky,
Yeah, there's some
Roundabout,
really neat, that's a beautiful piece of music,
Reviewing.
and
Yeah.
even more interesting to know that there's some influence on that line from Bob Dylan, but, and so
Yeah.
let me ask you this, regarding the track order, knowing that Yes fans are gonna be the first people to go out and get this, do you think John Anderson's piece being the first is the best placement for it? Because for me personally, and I'd love your take and anyone else watching or listening in the comments, for me, I see it both ways. Like, okay, this will blow their minds if they don't know he's on it. So let's open with that. Whereas I almost think it'd be more interesting as an Easter egg and make it like the sixth song in, and people go, "Whoa!" unless they're reading liner notes. But if there was a pre-release way, or I don't know, I think that might be more interesting than the obvious. Make it first because it's John Anderson and we were in Yes together, and you know. What do you
Yeah,
think?
so I have given thought to this actually, and the thing is, when putting an album together, the advice that people normally give or get or whatever is to put the first track has to be attention grabbing, and it
True.
perhaps even be the one that people that would probably become the favorite track of the album. And so with
Or
that
the
as a
single,
first,
but it's 12 minutes long.
yeah, like it's too long to be a single, but um it definitely grabbed my attention. And John's singing the way like he's doing a couple of different you know backing vocals and lead vocals.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, but I was also really impressed by the music of it, the instrumentation. And so by the end of those 12 minutes, I'm like, well, where do they go from here? That was
Right.
incredible. And I did really, really enjoy the rest of the album, but I think that first track might be my favorite. So I think it does its job, but I do wonder if any of the other tracks would top that first one for anyone.
Yeah. Interesting. And I think part of the answer to that would depend on whether or not they're Bob Dylan fans. And what I mean is not as in a Bob Dylan fan or not, but I should say familiar with his music or not. Because maybe people much more familiar have a favorite like Lay Lady Lay, and they think, oh, that'd be a great opening track. And maybe that would, because it was such a popular song. Um,
Yeah.
so there's so many different ways to toss this salad of songs.
Yeah, but even listening to it just as an album of music, I think it's very satisfying. Even if you're not a Bob Dylan fan, you can still appreciate it like we have.
Right.
So the track list includes, um, and I guess I'll say who the lead vocalists are on each one. So, like we said, Sad Eyed Lady of the Lowlands with John Anderson, Mama, You've Been on My Mind with Steve Howe, It's All Over Now, Baby Blue with Annie Haslam of Renaissance, Going, Gone with Max Bacon, who was in GTR,
Yeah.
Just Like a Woman, Steve Howe, Well with P.P. Arnold, The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll with Dean Dyson, Lay Lady Lay with Keith West, who was in Tomorrow, one of Steve Howe's pre-S bands, One Too Many Mornings with Phoebe Snow, I Don't Believe You with Steve Howe, and Don't Think Twice, It's All Right with Alan Clark, and Buckets of Rain with Steve Howe. And I think the inclusion of some of those previous collaborators, Max and Keith and even Annie,
Annie, yeah.
he recorded a song with her on a Yes tribute album, and then they did that live show. Like in a way, this at least a few of the tracks kind of feel like a Steve Howe retrospective in a way. Like
Yeah.
even though it's a Bob Dylan tribute album, it also feels like it gives a nod to those Steve Howe collaborations with these other musicians that he's played with before. And there are a few others that I don't, to my knowledge, think he's played with before this, which adds something interesting and new types of collaborations into the mix.
Yeah, and I'd like to read the instrumentation. The overall instrumentation of the album is Steve Howe on
Yeah.
guitar, pedal steel guitar, bass, mandolin, banjo, piano, organs, keyboards, and backing vocals, all at the same time, in fact. Just kidding. Uh, Dylan Howe, great job on drums. Jeff Downs on keyboards. Anna Palm on violin. Great job. I loved that. And same with Natalie Manzer on cello. Really good work there to bring those two stringed instruments in.
Yeah, and doing some research, Jeff is on tracks 5, 7, and 8. So Just Like a Woman, Hattie Carroll, and Lay Lady Lay. And I guess that kind of puts it, a little bit of maybe a unique thing about this album is apart from compilations or things that have bonus tracks on them, is this the only studio album that has both John Anderson and Jeff Downes on it?
Wow, that's a great tidbit, and I believe so. I
Yeah,
believe absolutely so. Yeah, that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Because I can't think of anything else. And also, I think this might be the only solo album by a Yes member that's a tribute album. Because Billy has worked on various solo albums that also include other Yes members, but they're not like Billy Sherwood solo albums. They're more of
Right.
a
He's
collective
done a
type of
lot
thing.
of tributes, but yeah, they're more collaborations that he put together with like Dave Kersner and whatnot. But you're right, it's not solo. So this does, I think, check off both those boxes as being quite unique.
Yeah,
Is Jeff on Jeff's not on track one. He's on, like you said, 5, 7, and
and 8. Yeah,
8. Yeah, okay. That'd be interesting if they were on the same song together. That would be even a bigger first.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
interesting.
yeah, and I see a few comments. Ivano Kogo is tuning in from Brisbane, Australia. And
Nice.
Mark Neubauer says Phoenix, Arizona. I guess that's where Mark is tuning in.
Oh, nice. I'm up in
And,
Globe, Mark.
yeah,
And I lived in Brisbane for a while at, I think it was called 17 Mile Rocks.
yeah, you got all your neighbors
Yeah.
tuning in here. Yeah.
I left
Um,
some big breadcrumbs.
yeah, and Mark also says Steve Howe. Wow, haven't heard his name in quite some time. When Yes came out, I was blown away. Each artist in that band was an amazing one in their own right. Yeah.
Yeah. Every iteration, no matter what anybody says, every iteration of the band has had just tremendous talent. Every single one.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was quite impressed with this album. But again, I'd really love to hear what people more familiar with Bob Dylan would think about it. Like, would they appreciate the differences, or would they be like Bob Dylan purists and be like it should have been done like that or
Or
whatever?
not done.
Yeah.
I and I'm almost embarrassed that I really am not that familiar with Bob Dylan's work, given my age and given the breadth of his career. And he's probably one of the most, if not the most popular American folk music artists. Like you got him, you got Don McLean, you got Peter, Paul, and Mary, you got, I guess, John Denver could qualify. Uh, certainly, oh, I'm having a brain fart. He's like 118 years old, the braids. What's wrong with me? You know who I mean? Willie Nelson, um, Johnny Cash. But as far as a straight up folk artist, he might be like at the top of that hill, I think. And I'm not
Yeah.
really that familiar with his music. It just wasn't my lane ever growing up. And I wasn't exposed to it a lot. So that's why I'm outside of that ecosystem.
Yeah, I do get the perception that he, along with others like the Beatles, were some of the biggest musical influencers in the 60s.
Yeah.
Um, and going back to Steve's autobiography, he says, I never heard whether Bob Dylan cared for these versions, but I
Oh,
can but I can accept that he might find that hard. His originals speak plenty about the way he recorded them, as do mine, but there's a world of difference between his live feel and my production style.
yeah. Wow, I wonder if that's still is that the current liner notes? He still doesn't know if Bob ever heard them or
Right. Yeah,
oh,
this autobiography came out 5 years ago, I think.
right.
So I guess he never heard
Oh,
whether
well after the
Bob.
album, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
I don't you find that odd?
I
Like
mean,
that someone didn't send something as a gift, from the record
well,
label or
well,
something.
even if they did, like, would Bob have listened? There might be some people who
Yeah, doesn't
might
want to
be,
hear remakes. Yeah.
yeah, who are like, I don't need to hear someone do something that I did, whereas others
Bastardizing my songs.
whereas others might be really curious and then be impressed and be like, "Oh,
Yeah,
this is I actually really like this."
yeah.
Um, so
Interesting.
yeah, but overall, great album. People should
Yeah.
definitely get this if they don't have it in their collection or if their old copy is worn out. The link to get these is in the description. But yeah, anything else about this album before we move on to the next one?
Just I'll add that even, you said it's a great album, and even not being familiar with each individual song is still a great listen. It's great music by Steve Howe. If you're a Yes fan, a Steve Howe fan, it's a must get, I think.
Yeah, and kind of a tangent, something that I kind of realized while listening to Max Bacon singing again. Uh, Benoit David can sound kind of like John Anderson or Trevor Horn. I think he could sound kind of like Max Bacon as well, like in some of his singing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's valid. That's a good
Yeah.
one. I agree.
All right. So we'll move on to the next one. So let me just pull up the file for this, but this is natural
Oh,
timbre,
hey, wait,
timbre, however.
sorry. Back up. I just noticed this other comment from Mark. He says, I lost track of them on their later on endeavors. This is neat. Thanks. And then he says, oh, I hope to meet you at John's later this month. So he's referring to, I'll give a shout out to John Papalardo, who ran into Enja and I at Walmart this morning up here in Globe. And John's putting on a big music event on his property, which is in Miami, Arizona, next to Globe, where we live, up on a hill. And that's the 27th. And I'm emceeing that. So I guess, Mark, you're going to be at that, which is really cool. What instruments do you play, Mark? That's awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I wonder if Ivano's coming from Brisbane.
Mm. Yeah, traveling all that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And I'm looking forward to that event too. And Angela forgot about it. And she's like, what are you guys talking about? I'm like, what? Are you serious? Come on. I'm going to wear my purple unitard and teal cape because I'm emceeing this thing.
Yeah.
All right. On to Timbre, Tromber, the other album.
Yeah, and funny enough, when I think of the word timber, I think of the other kind where someone chops wood and it's like
Wood.
timber. And funny enough,
Because timber is also wood.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean to fall. It means they're giving a shout out for what's falling.
Yeah, and Steve says in his autobiography that a working title for this album was Wood Under Wire, but then there was another record that came out with a similar title, so he wanted to change it, and that's
Wood Under Wire. Do you get it? The guitar construction.
Yeah,
that's neat. So natural timber. Okay.
Yeah. So the tracks on this one, this has 18 tracks, and unlike Portraits of Bob Dylan, this is all instrumental. So this includes Distant Seas, Province, Intersection Blues, Family Tree, Jay's Theme, In the Course of the Day, Dream River, Golden Years, The Little Galliard, which is a John Dowland piece rearranged by Howe. Up Above Somewhere, Curls and Swirls, Pyramidology, Lost for Words, Vivaldi piece called Winter, Solar Winds, and your favorite track, Your Move, followed
I
by
actually liked
Disillusion and
this
To Be
a
Over.
lot. I liked that a lot, actually. Yeah, Delusion and To Be Over. The instrumentation, then we'll get into our take on the album. Instrumentation is Steve Howe, acoustic guitar, banjo, acoustic bass, dobro, mandolin, percussion, auto koto, mandola, which is bigger than a mandolin, mandocello, which is even bigger, and a lap steel guitar. Then you got Andrew Price Jackman on piano and glockenspiel, who was in The Sin with Chris Squire, of course. Then you got Anna Palm on violin, Dylan Howe on drums, and references. Oh,
yeah. I copied and pasted that by accident. Yeah.
Dylan really not only did a great job on this, but I love the sound of how his drums were recorded on the songs that do have drums. Overall, how would you rank this amongst Steve's solo stuff?
Yeah, and he is on 4 of these tracks,
Yeah.
but yeah, among Steve's solo stuff, so I think I've been through at least most of his discography, but some of his albums, it's been a long while since the last time I've listened. But
Same.
overall, this was a very soothing record to listen to, as was Portraits. And, Eagle Records were very pleased with Portraits and asked him to do this acoustic album. And so this scratched an itch that Steve had for a while, and I think we've heard at least a few of these pieces in concert. Intersection Blues, I think, was on songs from Songas. Province might have been at my first Yes concert, unless I'm confusing it with
Mm.
something with a similar title. Family Tree actually kind of reminds me of Time is Time and of the song Layla, that Derek and the
Yeah.
Dominoes song.
Interesting.
Uh,
I love that song, Family Tree. That's tied for my favorite along with To Be Over is just magnificent on this. I first of all, it's one of my favorite Yes songs. I saw him do a solo acoustic version on the Full Circle tour, and then this is like an expanded version of that, and you get Dylan on drums, and I just absolutely it's worth buying it for that alone. It really is. I loved Curls and Swirls was great as well. I think was it Curls and Swirls I think it was Curls and Swirls, and probably at least one or two other where it's an instrumental piece of a song that there isn't another version with vocals, but he's clearly playing an additional part that does carry a melody as if it were a vocal line, and is very creative and done very, very well. I'm pretty sure it was Curls and Swirls, and like I said,
oh,
probably more
interesting.
than one. Yeah, it was like, oh wow, that sounds like absolutely a singing part, but it's just another guitar part on top of what else is going on. Um,
Yeah, and there's definitely that type of approach in the Yes material here, where you have to
yeah,
substitute the vocal parts that people are familiar with something
yeah,
else. And
and he did a really good job
yeah,
of that. Disillusion is just I love that passage from Starship Trooper, and he did such a great job on that as well. For me, this is like tied for my second favorite Steve Howe solo album. And if I listen to it some more, it might edge out the Steve Howe album, which I love his second attempt, not attempt,
mm,
effort. I love the second one. I love Penance being the first song. I think is perfect. But this is right there in the hierarchy of my favorites of his albums. His first being my favorite. I absolutely love that album. You get a nice package of Steve Howe extracted from what we know of his Yes contributions, and it's all of that. And it's just perfect, I think.
yeah, I think some of the guitar sounds on here reminded me of some of that late '70s stuff, like the Steve Howe album, and maybe
Yeah,
bits of Tormato here and there.
interesting.
Um,
Yeah, a lot of that having to do, I think, with the dobro and the slide guitar.
Yeah, and Lost for Words, I think that's the piece that has like a really mysterious, enigmatic feel at points. Like, I think that was really cool.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, apparently this was with Portraits. It wasn't too much of a challenge because like the Bob Dylan stuff was already there, and basically he had to like arrange it his own way. But Natural Timber, he has said, was a bit more of a challenge trying to write some of the newer compositions, but it came out really well. It really flows well. And my question for you, Dad, is this album ends with 3 Yes pieces. Do you think Solar Wind would work as like a final track if those Yes pieces weren't on here?
Yes, I do. I like that song a lot, and I think that that is a good way to end it. I like that. I typically, as you know, don't favor Yes albums that have this big thing going on, and then Soon is the exception to that, but it's part of a bigger composition. But typically I don't like Time Is Time being the last song of I mean, I get it. It's a cool down thing, but I like going out with a big bang. But Solar Winds, not only do I like that as the last song, as if the other three weren't on it, but I do like those three being last. I like that a lot. You know
Yeah,
why? I think because it doesn't it doesn't make them seem, where some people, not me, but some people might think it's low hanging fruit to just throw some Yes songs in there, or it's a given, or to me it makes them real special, being at the end of all these other original compositions, and then bringing them to life in a different way. Dissolution was kind of a surprise to see and hear on that, but then given the rest of the album, it kind of isn't. It fits right in, right?
yeah, and I think you and I kind of differ on like whether we want an album to feel like a concert or not. Like that's totally valid that you prefer them to end with a bang like a concert would, whereas I'm coming from the perspective of a studio album is allowed to be its own thing. It doesn't have to be the
Sure.
concert. Let the concert be the concert. But
Yeah.
with those three compositions really made me think of that concert comparison. Like you could imagine Steve Howe doing a full solo set, and then after Solar Winds, he like leaves the stage and then comes back for the encore. And it's like,
Yeah, and
okay,
blows.
now here's a treat for you, and plays a few Yes
Totally,
pieces as the encore.
totally, totally. And I forgot to mention on the previous album, I love Steve's vocals. I always have.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I really love the tone of his voice. He gets a lot of flack for his voice, but I love it. But the other thing about this is, this album, I think, has some of, if not his most beautiful classical guitar work. I don't know if you know this, so excuse me if this, I don't mean for this to sound condescending, but do you know the difference between a classical guitar and an acoustic guitar?
Uh I'm sure you can tell me the
Yeah,
difference in the
well, I don't know
best
if you
way.
know, so you can identify it by ear. A classical
Right.
guitar has nylon strings, whereas an
Okay.
acoustic guitar has steel strings. So the sound is different. Like this guitar up here on the
Oh, yeah.
left,
The
that
one on
was,
your shelf.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was grandpa's guitar, and that's a classical guitar. So the nylon strings have a much softer, it's what flamenco guitar playing style is played on. So it's a different sound and it's a different style of playing. And I think this album has some of, if not his best, classical guitar finger picking and work. Just absolutely love it.
Yeah, and, before I forget, one of the tracks in the course of the day, apparently he wrote part of that in the '80s when he met, Roger Dean's artist friend. I think his name was Ian Miller, and yeah,
Oh,
Ian Miller.
I was
A
thinking of the Lucameo, the one who helped with Relayer.
oh, I but yeah, and he, Ian had this piece called Hollywood Gothic, and so for a while, Steve kind of thought of the music piece as Hollywood Gothic before changing it like way later to in the course of the day after he added
Really?
like more stuff to it to what it became.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, but yeah, it's pretty funny how like we've reviewed just now an album that begins with the Yes connection and an album that ends with Yes connection.
That's true. Yeah. Interesting. I loved this album. I love it.
Yeah, same.
Cool.
Um, so again, like if you don't have this, go ahead and get it. Again, the links are in the description, and yeah, like I feel like whenever I listen to, I'm so used to listening to full band stuff, like not just Yes, but like rock bands and all of that. But sometimes I need stuff in between where it's more uh, more of a solo thing, and whether it be with vocals or instrumental. And so albums like these really scratch that itch and add more variety into like my listening rotation and whatnot.
Yeah, I like that. Sometimes just switching it up, like a diet or a workout, change of scenery, change of an earscape. environment. One thing we didn't cover, what do you think of the two covers of these two albums, starting with this one?
Oh yeah. So this one, I guess the swirls are very much in the vein of what I'm kind of used to from some of his solo album covers. I'm not really sure if there is supposed to be something we're supposed to read into with it, but I'm fine with it. I think it's fine.
I I've always liked, and this is why I like the previous cover a lot better. I've always loved seeing Steve with his instruments, and I saw
Oh
a
yeah.
post on Facebook recently where he's just in this room full of stringed instruments, just surrounded, somewhat akin to. I love that picture on the inside of Fragile. I
Oh
would,
yeah.
and the cover of Beginnings. I always much quite prefer to see him with instruments. And if you go back to the other cover,
Yeah, I'm pulling
this
it
is
up
why
again.
I like this one. He just looks so happy, and this one here, boing, here it comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love that. I love singing with his instruments. So this other one was kind of like, oh wait, you didn't bring your guitar? Okay, just turn to your left, hold it. Okay, great, you can go.
Right.
It's kind of like, what's going on there? What's the theme? It's just a profile. Whereas this is just so vibrant, and he's doing his thing. He's got a mandolin. So
Yeah, and
that's my take on the cover art.
do you think having the portraits cover in black and white is maybe a throwback to the 60s?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I
okay.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it works pretty well. But
Totally.
yeah, I definitely prefer that cover over the other one. But
Yeah,
still great music on both of these for sure.
yeah, definitely. And Mark, I saw your note. I'm remembering. So cool, fellow drummer, not bad. Oops. Yeah, cool. Looking forward to seeing it up there. And folks, like Steve said, if you're interested, get these albums. The reissues, they're beautiful. The mastering, the mixing is wonderful. The music, of course, is stellar, and the links are in the post wherever you're watching this or listening to it. And you can listen to us if you don't want to see us or care about pictures or video clips that we share. You can listen to us at anchor.fm/Yesshift, and you can follow us on YouTube at Yesshift and on Facebook.com/Yesshift. And can people send hate mail to us if they want, Steve?
Yeah, like no guarantee that we'll read the hate mail, but you can email us at yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com with any feedback and topic
And there is a
suggestions and
guarantee because
whatnot.
we wouldn't know it's hate mail unless we read it anyways, and we read everything we
Right.
can.
Well, I mean, we won't read it on the show if
Yeah.
it's like
Unless it's real
super
funny,
bad.
unless you make it real funny and favor it
Oh
more
yeah.
about me, then we're cool with it.
Yeah, like
And
this
you can
guy
send
doesn't know the difference between classic and acoustic.
well, not everyone knows. I don't know if I know a lot of non-musicians that would know. And for those who don't know, the only instrument Steve plays is the keyboard because he's an author. Um,
Yeah, for those
and
listening to the audio, Dad just held up like a computer keyboard in
oh,
front of
right,
him.
that's right. And you could send in show ideas. We've done maybe over the course of yesterday was our 200th show, not counting the news desk reports and some other reviews. But what over the last 4 years, Steve, we've done maybe a handful of shows that were other people's ideas, like
Uh, I
yesterday.
th- I think it was more than a handful,
Oh,
but
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we've definitely like taken people's ideas and run with them, and we even came up with a couple more during the course of yesterday's show, so those should be fun to
Yeah.
get to at some
And,
point.
and a couple years ago, or coming up on 3 years this October, when we filmed the documentary of Roger Dean and Freya Dean's art exhibit in San Francisco, one night in our hotel room, we just brain dumped buckets of ideas. Did we even get through all of those? We literally
I
had like 20
I
show ideas.
think yeah, I think we've gone through most of them at least. I'll have to
Okay.
look at that again. Yeah.
So we're open to ideas, and that's not necessarily because we're short on ideas, but because we want you to be part of this. We're all Yes fans, and in one form or another, one incarnation or another, and we welcome your ideas. So send them in, and we'll see what happens. We got some ideas, as Steve mentioned yesterday at the end of the show, from the idea that we did do from how do you pronounce his last name?
Carl Coppage.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that was 10 favorite prog bands that are not Yes.
Yeah, and
Which
that
is
was
cool.
tough. Like thinking back to it, I think my like 9th and 10th place would probably change frequently depending on like
Yeah.
what newer prog band I don't normally listen to, I listened to
Yeah.
most recently or
I
something.
had like 6 honorable mentions just because I couldn't not include. It's like, okay, there's these 9 and all these others are my 10th. It's kind of
Yeah.
like how it felt. Even it ventured into progressive metal with Haken, who I'm just crazy about.
Yeah, like thinking back to my list, without spoiling what my list was, just thinking about how like it probably seems pretty crazy to some people that I didn't have like Jethro Tull or Kansas or Flower Kings on my list, even though I really enjoy those bands. But like narrowing it down to 10 in the
Yeah,
moment is just really tough.
totally. Now, the other thing is one more thing, folks, before we go, is that for me, I don't know what your count was, Steve, but for me, there were like 7 bands I've never heard of. So there's that whole, community of being exposed by other members that follow us and listen to the show, being exposed to music maybe never heard of that ends up on a list with some of your other favorite bands. So it begs the question, maybe I should listen to them. So
Yeah.
interesting stuff. A couple from Italy, and then I don't know where some of the others were, but I never heard of them. I thought that was really neat. I honestly expected a lot of the obvious answers, and then to
Yeah.
see how much Flower Kings popped up, and Dream Theater and Transatlantic that are all much more contemporary. But I was mind boggled. Go watch that episode, folks, and send hate mail if I'm wrong. I never considered Supertramp prog, and they popped up on like 5 people's lists. We read lists that were submitted or posted in the advertisement posts for that episode. So we blew through like 20 of those. Then we read the comments. Then we read our lists. So, and Supertramp never struck me as progressive.
Yeah, and we were told to listen to a specific album that is apparently their most
Yeah,
prog. So
crime of the century.
yeah, so check
Yeah,
that out. Yeah.
but I never considered ELP prog. So there we go.
What?
Just kidding. Just kidding. No, save the hate mail. That was a joke. That was
Right.
a joke. All right. Thanks so much, folks. And thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody tuning in, chiming in, Ivano. Everybody else, we appreciate you so much. And when's our next show? Do we know?
So tomorrow I'm doing a show talking about Foghat's Fool for the City and Gentle Giants playing the
All
Fool.
right.
And then I think the next time you and I are doing a show together is when we have Derek Schulman from Gentle Giant on the show on the September 25th.
Yeah. September 25th, Derek Schulman going to be on for the 3rd time talking about his autobiography, Giant Steps. Excited about that. Derek's always great company, very generous with his time and his info and his wisdom. So tune in to that. And on the Drum Talk TV side, thanks for tuning in on Drum Talk TV. If you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube there, we have a fan Q&A session where you ask the questions for Drum Talk TV Brilliance membership site members, and that is with Roger Earl on the 17th at noon Pacific. And if I may just briefly, here's how you can be a part of it. You can sign up for drumtalktvbrilliance.com for less than a bucket of chicken or a pizza a month, or you can just get the gig pass if you don't care about any of the other features, which would be crazy. But if you don't really care about them, which really would be crazy, but you just want to be in the Q&A with Roger Earl, you're welcome to do that. You talk all about Foghat's history. You can talk about his wine brand that he and Linda have, Foghat Wine, and anything else. Ask about touring in the old days, whatever. Roger, I happen to know, loves growing vegetables and fly fishing, so you can ask him about that as well. So sign up. We'd love to see you there. Yesshift fans join us, and Drum Talk TV fans for Derek Schulman on the 25th, as Steve said, and that's at noon Pacific as well. So you folks in the UK, Western Europe, and whatnot will be at a convenient time for you. And if you already have plans, put them off. We'll write you a note.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.